Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're Masechtas Yevamot stop Pei Aleph. We are going to begin on Pei Aleph Hamad Aleph by the Mishnah. So we learned a distinction when it comes to a Sris Chama versus a Sris Adam. A Sris Chama is someone who has this deficiency all the way from birth. In that situation, we say that individual is mutter to go into the Kahal Hashem, and therefore, because of that, the wife will be able to eat truma because it's a valid marriage. However, as we're going to see in a moment, a Sris Adam, someone who developed this later on in life, is going to be asur leva b'kahal Hashem, and therefore, in a relationship with a woman, she will not be able to eat truma because it's a forbidden relationship. So this is what the Mishnah says: Sris Chama Kayin. So you have a Sris Chama Kayin Shenasa Bas Yisrael Machil b'truma, as we said. Because since it was from birth, that is someone who is allowed to eat truma, and his wife he's allowed to marry, and therefore she could also eat truma. However, Rashi says over here of a Sris Adam Misl Nami Pasal Lo Mitruma. However, when it comes to Mitruma to be Nasha, Dahainu Patsua Daka. So again, the din is that when it comes to a situation of a Sris Adam, that individual is also to come to Kal Hashem. So this was already question 7. It's also TB5, which is Sris Koyin Shenasa Bas Yisrael Ta'im Achil B'Truma. Is this Bas Yisrael allowed to start eating Truma? And the answer is, if it's a Sris Chama, yes. The Sris Adam Lo Maichel, and it says in the parentheses, just quoting Rashi, V'ya Poisel Mitruma D'Mei Nasha Dahainu Patsua Daka. She would also be puzzled from Truma to be Nasha, from her father's house. In other words, let's say if she was a Kohen, Bas Kohen. Okay, now let's continue the Mishnah. Rav Yosi, Rav Shimon Omer. They both say regarding the following situation of an androgynous. So we know an androgynous is a person who has characteristics of a Zachar and a Nekeva. So in that situation, if he's a Kohen, Shenasa Bas Yisrael, this person who does have some status of being a man, but he's a Nekeva as well. So what happens if he marries a Bas Yisrael? So Machil B'Truma, amazingly, it says that we actually will allow her to eat Truma, because he's a Kohen, even though she's a Bas Yisrael. So apparently that is a valid marriage enough that we'll allow her to start eating Truma. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Tumtum, if let's say you have an individual who's a Tumtum, someone who his genitalia is not determined whether he's a Zachar or Nekeva, Shenikra, and there was a tear, V'nimsa Zachar, and all of a sudden it became understood that this was actually a man, Lo Yachleitz. We do not want this person to do Chalitza, Memneshu Kasris. He has the same din as a Sris, like a Sris Adam. Says Rashi, Im Yesh Ach, let's say he's another brother. Fine. Now androgynous, Noise of a lo nisa. So an androgynous can get married to a woman because, since as we said, he has a status of a zachar. Of a lo nisa, but not to a man. Says Rashi, Shu kazachar, v'shoichev imo harihu kibal hazachar. So just like there's an Isser Mishkam Zachar, so an androgynous also cannot be with a man because of this. However, we do allow him to be with a woman, even though he has certain female attributes. Rabbi Lezer Omer, androgynous chayavin love skill kazachar. An androgynous, and the Gemara is going to explain what this is arguing about. He says you can be chayav skill just like he's a zachar. Again, regarding to Mishkav Zachar, l'chayra is the same thing. This is why he can't get married. So I have to understand exactly how they argue. So the Gemara begins with a pshita. L'chayra it's a davar pashit that a Sris Chama, if he's a Kayan and marries a Bas Yisrael, which she's allowed to, she should be able to eat Truma. We had this svara numerous times, that maybe, because the Pasuk says, Yolid Beso, so maybe the only time we allow her to eat Truma is Dafka if she marries someone who's shaykh to have children. But since he is not shaykh to have children, so maybe she cannot eat Truma either. Okay. Kamashmal, and that's not the case. Now, the Gemara says, Rav Yosef, Rav Shimon, Omer, androgynous. So we said an androgynous, if he marries a Bas, and he's a Kayan, and he marries a Bas Yisrael, so he says that she could eat Truma. So what exactly does this mean? So Rashi says, "L'kama mafarish lo betruma bizman hazeh d'Rabbanan." This is perhaps only talking about bizman hazeh, where truma is only d'Rabbanan. Of a midi d'Oraisa lo. However, our Mishnah maybe not when it comes to a din d'Oraisa. My time a suffix ish suffix ishu, because this guy's a suffix. So why would we want to violate maybe suffix d'Oraisa l'chumra? We're not going to allow it. Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. We don't know what this guy is, so we'll be making a eat truma. It's only truma d'Rabbanan. Okay. Now Omer Shlachish machil b'truma v'in machil b'chaz v'shaik. Now this is perhaps what this is saying, that you're allowed to eat truma, which is bizman hazeh, but not chaz v'shaik, which was something in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. You cannot eat something in which is an isser, which is a doraisa based, because of the suffix. You can even eat the chaz v'shaik. You can even eat the chaz v'shok. That's not a problem. Which means l'chayra, that means even on dini doraisa, even though it's a suffix. Now it's hard to understand the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan, so we'll understand this. Rish Lakish Maishna chaz v'shaik doraisa, so truma nami doraisa. So right now we're not understanding this as Rashi explained. Right now the Havamina, we think that the truma that we're referring to is even a truma doraisa. And the question is, why are we machalik between chaz v'shok and truma if they're both doraisa? If you could eat truma, then you should be able to eat chaz v'shok. Mamonoshach. Where's the hachma schema truma bisman hazeh d'Rabbanan? So we'll stop there for a second. So what he's really doing is making a distinction between a din d'oraisa and d'Rabbanan. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, no. The time nowadays where truma is only d'Rabbanan, yes. So Gemara says, so if that's the case, my lo adatani ein machila b'chaz v'shaik. Why does it mention this totally different case of chaz v'shok? To make a distinction in the thing itself and say, it should just only talk about truma, and you can just make a distinction between Rabban and Deraisa, and from that you'll be able to deduce the chaz v'shok also. So Gemara says, "Hachinami kaimer." You're right. This is taka what we're trying to get across. Kishu machil b'truma bizman hazeh d'Rabbanan. That you're only allowed to eat bizman hazeh, something which is truma d'Rabbanan. Ve'in machila bizman hazeh. The time, which means when is there chaz v'shaik? When there's karbanos, the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they feel with truma d'Rabbanan. We won't even allow you to eat truma d'Rabbanan in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Well, why not? It's only d'Rabbanan, because dilma asil oicha b'truma d'Oraisa. This is actually a smart in the fourth parak in Kedushin as well, that if we matter you to eat truma d'Rabbanan, which you're allowed to nowadays, but if in the time of the Beis HaMikdash we matter truma d'Rabbanan, so you may think, oh, well, there's no difference. I see trumas being eaten, so maybe truma d'Oraisa is also allowed to be eaten. So therefore, because of that, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, no truma is allowed to be eaten, not even truma d'Rabbanan. However, in the time without a Beis HaMikdash, where there's no chaz v'shok, so that's where he's lenient. Okay. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, he was very lenient, and Omer says, Av machila b'chaz v'shaik. So even though we're talking about a din d'oraisa, which would extend also to truma d'oraisa, he would say it's allowed. So Omer Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, mi savret truma b'zman hazeh d'Rabbanan. Who thought that truma nowadays is d'Rabbanan? It says Rashi, how could you be saying that that's what it's referring to? Armalei in sha'ani shayna igul bi'igulim oila. Because I learn that when it comes to igul bi'igulim, which I'll explain in a second, these round cakes of figs, they are oila. Which we're going to see what that is. So look at Rashi. Sha'ani shayna b'reisa igul shel truma, batal b'meya shel chulin. O igul shel truma tameya batal b'kuf igulim shel truma tahara. Let me just read one more line. Rashi v'eat truma b'zman hazeh deraisa. If it's really deraisa b'zman hazeh, kivan the igul davar chashivu. Since an eagle is a davar chashiv v'darkali manais, it's something which is counted lo batal. It should not be batal even 1:100 ratio. So basically saying it must be that truma b'zman hazeh is only the Rabbanan. Otherwise, it wouldn't be batal since it's a davar chashiv, since it's something which is counted. So what exactly again is igul b'igulim? So again, this is referring to round cakes of figs of truma that are mixed with other figs of chulin. So if there's a 1:100 ratio, then it's batal. it's oila, which means you can eat all if one is removed. So what does that mean? It must be that truma is only d'Rabbanan. Otherwise, we wouldn't allow this because it's a davar chashuv. It should never be bottled. Okay. So he said, did I not learn chaticha b'chatichais oila? Piece with pieces are oila. So what is that? This is referring to pieces of a carbon chatas that got mixed up, and also is a davar chashuv, and it is often counted but not always counted. So in other words, we're going to see now, this is also Gemara in Beya, that there's, when it comes to a davar chashuv, is it something which is always counted for it to be not batal, or is it something which is sometimes counted, sometimes not? So misaver kol shedarko imanu sheninu. Do you think it's something which I read kol shedarko, that's sometimes counted? Es shedarko imanu, something which is always counted. Sheninu. In other words, the only time it's batal is dafka if it's es shedarko imanu, so it's always counted. So when it comes to this is something, these igul bigulim is a kol shedarko imanu. So the reason why a person is it's batal is not because it's a davar chashuv and therefore must be because truma is d'Rabbanan. No, maybe truma is d'Oraisa, but the reason why it's batal is because it's not considered to be a davar. It's not considered like a davar chashuv because it's not something which is always counted like a davar sheba minyan. Question 8. Igul bigulam oila madula amrina mazed davar sheba minyan loy batal. So either L'Reish Lakish mishum de truma bezman as d'Rabbanan, Rabbi Yochanan mishum the est shedarko imanu shenina, but igul pa'amim shemachim ba'oimid. Sometimes they're not counted, sometimes they're more through estimation. Okay, which obviously if it's something chashiv, you're not going to say, yeah, here, take this. It's got, if you count every single one, that means it's very, very special. So if sometimes people do ba'oimid, it shows that doesn't have that element of chashivas. Where do we see this concept, this machlokas, that none? As we learned, it says as follows: Mi shahayu loy chavili tiltan shel kilei kerem. Let's say a person has this fenugreek, and if you look in Rashi, it says fenugreek min kitnios, so it's a type of legume, and it gets sweetened up in a pot. So if you have this fenugreek, which is kilei kerem, yidolku, and it got lit up, says Rashi, kilayim. B'sreif v'dechsev tukdash tukat eish. This arvu b'cheiros, and it got mixed up, this klei karim, with others, as we continue to pay off on the base. Kulan yidolku. Everything has to be destroyed. The Rashi says because the little batli, it's not batal. It doesn't get batal. It doesn't matter how many it's commingled with. The Rabbi Meir. Actually, it's a 1 in 200 ratio. Something in which is sometimes counted has this level of being mekadesh. Says Rashi, Mosayim or Shol Shmeyo is still a bottle. That it's not bottle. Actually, it's only 6 things that have this special quality, which we'll see what they are in a second. Shiva. What are these 6 or 7? So Gaizi Parech the Rimoni Badan. So these special nuts or these pomegranates from this location. The Chavios Satumais are closed up barrels. The Chilfei Teradin or beet stalks. The Koilche Kruv, stalks of cabbage, Ulas and gourds, which are Yavanis of Greek. Rabbi Kiva Moisev al Kikar Shel Bahabayis Haroyim Arlo Kalei Kerem. So there's also, when it comes to these special breads that were made by Bahabayis, that also takes upon itself this element of cheshivas, and therefore what is fit for Arla, says Rashi, Kikain Geizim, Remoinim, the Chaviyos, Mekanchin Vasurin Esakshir Mishim Arla. So these things which are more tree based can make everything else usher with Arla. And things which are Klai Kerem, which are more vineyard based, like the Teradim and Kruv and the last, these things grow in the ground, so they will have will make everything else Klai Kerem. So we actually, again, we see this machlokas. What constitutes a davar sheba minyan? Is it something which is always counted or sometimes counted? Okay. Says Rashi, even occasionally, the loy batal. Hilkach igul isal chadaitach truma bezman as a deraisa lo hayabatal. So my chaticha, what is this referring to when we mentioned on the previous Amud that when we have this chaticha, pieces of carbon chatas that get mixed up, is also a davar chashiv, and it's something which is sometimes counted, not always counted. This sanya chaticha shel chatas tameya. So you have again this carbon chatas which is tame, and it gets commingled. Shenis arba b'meya chatichais shel chatas taharos. It's mixed up with 100 pieces of carbon chatas which are tahar. V'chein perusa shel lechem hapanim. Let's say you also have a piece of the lechem hapanim, the showbread, which is tameya. Shenis arba b'meya perusa shel lechem hapanim taharos tala. So according to this, it is batal. It is going to become nullified, and it's not considered to be a davar sheva minyan. Rabbi Yehuda omer lo sal. No, it does not go up. Says Rashi, Diksav Rabbi Yehuda b'chol duchna min b'mino lo batal. Because since we're talking about the same foods that are mixed together, he holds min b'mino is not batal. So since they send min, it's not going to nullify. But let's say it's not exactly the same because you have meat, but one's a chatas and it's mixed with chulin meat, or for that matter, when it comes to that being a mixture, lo taleh. In that case, everyone holds that it will not be batal. Why? Rashi says Tanakama maida. Even the Tanakama will agree that it's not going to be batal. Why? Says Rashi, because the reality is that you could always be sold to a kohen, because we're talking about what's the mixture. It's not that there's something tameh, it's lechem hapanim tahora or chatas tahora. So a kohen is allowed to eat that. So therefore, we're not going to say it's batal, because you could always just sell that to a kohen for a lower price because of supply and demand. So therefore, because of that, everyone holds it's not batal. Katani miyas, when almost we still learned the reisha tala. What's the question? So look in Rashi, Kashel Reish Lakish. This is a question. Why? To Oimer Kol Shadar Kalimanos. He says that sometimes something which is counted still makes it a davar chashiv. Dahahacha Dar Kalimanos Subatal. Over here, this is something which is Dar Kalimanos, and we find that it's batal. So since the meat, okay, so that's the question. According to Reish Lakish, he holds it's still a davar chashiv and it should not be batal. So how could over here say it's batal? So Amar Rabbi Chia b'Rei Rav Huna b'nimucha. We're talking about where since the meat was dissolved, it's no longer davar chashiv, and that's why it's batal here. So you're right. Maybe normally he would hold that it would in fact be not batal. However, in this situation, because the meat has dissolved, therefore it's not an issue. Okay. Fine. This is it. We're actually in the middle of it, so we're going to stop at this piece right here. And I think we have one question which I didn't address. TA4. Tanan. So we hit about Shimon Omer Manjreganis Koin Shenasa Bas Yisrael Machil Betruma. Matai machil kul amaroi, or matai havi plukta. When could they eat, and when is it a machlokas? So bizman is lo kul yalma meichel. If it's truma d'Rabbanan, bizman is you can eat. Bizman beis hamikdash pligi, the machlokas. Even when it comes to truma d'Rabbanan, they argue in the time of the beis hamikdash. Ad kan.